Welcome to this week's episode of Gods and Monsters by E.E. King, read by me, E.E. King. Each week, MetaStellar is releasing an episode of Gods and Monsters, both in print and on recording YouTube. Thank you for listening. And now, episode 24, Wastelands of the Wild. Last week, Jim was visited by a Mimi. He thinks he sees Christiane, but it's really a skinwalker. Jim finds two odd coins, just like the one he wears around his neck. And now, episode 69, River, San Francisco, 1985, jail. For 2 days, Huck perches on the window ledge of River's hospital room. River wonders if Huck remembers the other hospital window he'd once waited on long, long ago. Huck scavenges food from the streets and dives bomb the occasional red hawk. A few songbirds cheer when he harasses the hawk. Others, raising their young in the nearby trees, chase Huck when he flies too close to their nests. But Huck has no appetite for their offspring. He prefers remnants of junk food, easily scavenged from the street. River lies in the hospital half-light, the twilight between waking and sleeping. He dreams of a pale, flawless man. Rainbow tears drip from his fathomless eyes, tinting his white skin. After 3 days, River, though not strong, is well enough to return home. He's wheeled out to a waiting police car by a silent nurse and Officer Jackson. Royal treatment, River says. Huck swoops down to gently perch on River's shoulder. Shoo, the nurse cries, waving her hands like a twisted windmill. Leave him be, River says. Jackson, Huck caws. Well, if it ain't my old friend, Jackson chuckles. It's okay, nurse, I'll take them from here. The nurse sniffs, muttering about dirt and birds, and sachets into the hospital. River and Huck are driven to jail. First time I ever booked a bird before, Jackson says. If I'm gonna be here a while, maybe Huck had better wait outside, River asks, but he hopes that Jackson will let Huck stay. He always feels lost without Huck. Jackson holds out his arm to Huck. Come on, kiddo, he says. This jail's no place for birds. But Huck refuses to leave. He hops just out of range of Jackson's fleshy hands. Huck, River commands, go to Jackson. Jackson, Huck caws. He cocks his head to one side, examining Jackson with bright, quizzical eyes, but he will not come to either man. Jackson and River both sigh. Worse than a goddamn cat, mutters Jackson. Guess you're getting booked, Jackson says to Huck, but hell if I'll fingerprint you. Chapter 70, Jim. Antioras, New York, 1985, Survivors and Outcasts. Jim wakes in the sharp, bright, unforgiving light of dawn. In his cool, damp tunnel, the mole cricket is still asleep, dreaming of love. Outside, it is warm and bright. Jim looks out the window. He watches songbirds and sparrows scraping for seed. He marvels that they can be so chipper without caffeine. Perhaps seeds contain caffeine. After all, coffee is a kind of seed. Stretching, he walks to the stove, brews a cup, and sips it, hot and black. Then he wanders out to the barn. Once inside, he wheels the new old coins into a chain. He fastens them around his wrist. He feels their heat against his pulse, comforting as a lover's kiss, reassuring as a promise. He begins to bend screws, nails, sprockets, broken watches, and forks into claws. He imagines new crows, but the metal has another plan. Beneath his hands, warm in the coolness, scrap metal sprouts from silver barn duds. Scrap metal wings sprout from silver barn duds. Or are they pigeons? What is the difference, Jim wonders, except in how we think of them? Doves, the symbol of peace and the Holy Spirit. Pigeons, vermin, rats with wings. Man has always despised the survivors, coyotes and pigeons. It's those who we manage to exterminate that we revere. Once we have destroyed a being, we venerate it. Wolves, natives, and all the wild places in the soul. The crows, hanging on their gossamer threads of spider silk, begin to swing violently back and forth. The dust in the barn swirls, forming a small twister. It gathers cobwebs around it. Faster and faster it spins, catching stray sunlight shimmering with iridescence in the dimness of the barn, forming a rainbow crow. Then slowly it elongates into a wolf. The wolf rises on its hind legs. Dust fur falls like rain, feathering into the plumes of a dove. The dove's wings became sleeves. A mimi is shining like a hologram in the gloaming. Once these woods were so heavy with pigeons, limbs broke from trees where they nested. They traveled like the Lenai Lenape, feasting when the earth was rich, moving when it needed rest. Now they are no more. We too traveled, as Kija Makam directed. Sometimes we lived on the small running birds you call quail, sometimes on wild turkey, sometimes on fish. We buried their bones beneath the roots of seeds that Kijumakang provided: corn, beans, squash, and tobacco. We planted beans next to corn, for the great green stalks were a support to the climbing beans that could not stand alone. We planted all together, all in harmony, as Kijuamakang would. Kijuamakang does not plant in rows. We were like those traveling birds of gray rainbow feathers, making camp and staying when weather smiled and food was plentiful, then taking wing and moving on when crops were done and game was scarce. Pigeons always return home, teaching us to stay heart close to family and friends, no matter how far away. Pigeon reminds us that those we love are our roots, a support even in the toughest winters. They have made us who we are and who we will be. Pigeon is a foundation, the nurturer, protector, and teacher. If you have Pigeon as your totem, you are never alone, for Pigeon will watch your back. He sees the wide circle of life around and below. He looks to the past to learn about the future. Pigeon is never lost. He encourages us to focus on our destination rather than our direction. They're gone now, those great gray winged clouds of family and hope, shot from the sky for sport, living only in the memory of a dead woman. Amimi's dust face grows and sharpens into a beak. Her eyes move sideways on her head, catching the orange sun. She expands, growing giant. Particles move apart, breaking into light, filling the barn with a glowing haze that is briefly blinding. The strands of web holding the crows aloft break, and the crows drift down, gentle as feathers, to the barn floor. The light fades, leaving Jim alone in the barn with his creations. Jim is tired, but his hands are not. They create a small flock of pigeons. Then, half-moon blade, a bent spoon tail, and clusters of nails form a tiny hanging baby possum. A soda can cut into a lima bean-shaped oblong with bent wire antenna and 6 legs gave birth to an immortal cockroach. What is it today? He thinks. All the outcast animals of the world. Before you know it, I'll be welding rats. That night, in the dark of Jim's dreams, rainbow pigeons rain from the sky. Possums swing like pendulums from the stars, and the silver cockroaches sing. Man kills the forest at his feet, the ice caps melt under his heat. Under his ever-cutting hand, civilizations turn to sand, making wastelands of the wild, a sandbox for his only child. Men talk money while we wait, meekly to inherit fate. Chapter 71, Gabrielle, San Francisco, 1985. Mother. That night, behind closed eyes, a beautiful pale woman cradles Gabrielle in her arms. He is as brilliant and distant as a star. She gazes at him with eyes green as emeralds, green as longing, green as spring. Awakening in the dawn, his orchid stems, leaves, and buds are suddenly alive with color. His spectrum is almost complete. The rainbow, that promise of hope, that sign of continuance, has begun to arch into his soul. But the color is still separated by the black lines of his existence. Beautiful, isn't it? Asks Rio, even though he knows Gabrielle cannot hear him, even though he knows he is talking to himself. The Buddha said, if we could see the miracle of a single flower clearly, our whole life would change. I think that's true in a way, not that you are seeing clearly. All those black lines dividing color like leaded glass, they're in your head, not in the flower. Still, we mostly see what's inside ourselves. At best, we see part of the whole, a fraction of the color spectrum, a smidgen of the sound waves. Other animals can feel the magnetic pull of earth and stars. Spirits can read thoughts and see the continuum of the universe. It's strange that you, Gabrielle, who can touch electricity, reset circadian rhythms, and call both the living and the dead, cannot see the hummingbird flash or hear my voice. My undoing was not in missing the beauty of a blossom, Rio continues, even though he knows he might as well be talking to the wind. It was that I wanted beauty and perfection in everything, permanently. I should have realized that nothing, not even eternity, lasts forever. I wish I'd known that happiness is seeing the water lily you've been watching for a week blossom, even if the bloom only lasts a day. Chapter 72, River, San Francisco, 1985. Hot breath, cold breath. Autopsy report on Wang Li Jun, Asian male, 47. The deceased was shot by over a dozen bullets, perforating lungs, legs, and arms. Death was caused by a silver bullet, which penetrated the deceased's heart. River sits in a folding chair behind a rough wooden table, Huck on his shoulder. Jackson and his partner, awake for once, sit on the other side of the desk. River thinks of all the movies and TV shows he's seen where someone is questioned in just such a room. Things never turn out well for the questioned. River has always liked Jackson, but now, Watching his large red hands, River imagines his face smashing both back and forth between them. Surely they wouldn't really hit him, at least not in front of Huck. River knows Jackson has a soft spot for Huck. How did you get that gun, River? Jackson asks. I don't know. It was in my hand when I awoke. What attacked you? I don't know. You don't know a lot, do you, little buddy? River wonders when he has become little buddy. Jackson is a large man, 6 feet tall, meaty and red. But River, at 5'11", is muscular and strong. Jackson sighs. Didn't you see anything? River shudders involuntarily, remembering the sharp wolf face condensing into Wang Li Ju's flat features. Jackson's eyes narrow. I remember being struck from behind. Hot breath, claws, teeth. Yeah, well, there were claws and teeth, all right. Apparently you were attacked by some sort of prehistoric wolf. I tell you, crime in this city is getting weirder and weirder. First there's that gay bloodsucker, and now this. Jackson sighs. Jackson? Huck hops onto Jackson's desk, cocking his head so that he can look up into Jackson's eyes. Jackson grins and shakes his head. Glancing sidelong at his partner, he shamefacedly pulls out a few lint blue peanuts from his breast pocket and puts them near Huck. Jackson! Huck takes a peanut and glides onto the floor. Huck shreds the pile, picks out the nut, and swallows it whole. Then he delicately tears the shell into small bits and swallows them too. Jackson laughs. His partner looks at the remnants of nutshell on the floor. Don't worry, it'll get cleaned up, Jackson says. Huck leaps up for another. Jackson stares at River. I don't suppose you know what Mr. Wang was doing either, do you? River shakes his head. Jackson exhales noisily. Didn't think so. Look, River. River is relieved to have ceased being little buddy. We talked to your employer. We know that you and Wang work together. We know you didn't get along, but besides that, we don't really have anything. The gun wasn't registered. It disappeared out of a pawn shop the other night. Nothing else was stolen. You were holding it. The only prints on it are yours, but you say you don't know how it got there. We know it fired a hell of a lot of bullets onto them and to Wang, but they ain't what killed him. And there weren't no gunpowder on your hands, so we can't hold you. Then there's the fact that you got attacked. Nothing matches up. This city is a mess. It's giving me heartburn, I tell you. Jackson groans. We're letting you go. We have to. But River, if you do remember anything at all, let me know, will ya? River nods. He walks out of the room and is given his belongings. Huck grabs another peanut from Jackson's outstretched hand and flies after. Thank you for joining us. Join us next week when this story seems incomplete, as fragile as glass, as insubstantial as love. Pamela puts her finger to his lips. River takes his hand. She tries to pull away, but he holds her fast. Her hands are surprisingly cold. Thank you for joining us.